Jesus is Lucifer. Lucifer is also Gabriel. Gabriel is a member of a family of creatures that are highly evolved and they can change their atomic form like chameleons change colors. They can literally go from, pure light to pure darkness and whatever else. People look at these in, a dichotomy of angels versus demons, and it's actually not like that. There are multiple definitions of both which have been developed over the years, more or less, as a result of people constantly doing this thing where they compare things to what they feel would be an angel or a demon. And there's a genetic kind of connotation in that, about the way things flower out and differentiate, so that you know demons and I don't know, angelic people are somehow genetically connected. Jesus is the rebirth of a being who had no identity. So that being was referred to and viewed as the one. Is an avatar, literally. Through this, see, in a computer, in a simulation, anything, nothing is perfect. We tend to remove ourselves and act as if we're, things are born in sin and there's a real story, and the things born in sin are just pulling down the real story, and the real story could go on without all the things born in sin, and the things born in sin are just, forcing themselves to be there and so on, but actually they're co-relative to their journeys and growth and so on. They wouldn't exist without each other. And generally the comparison of the dichotomy, or it's kind of weighing one against the other to see the opposites and understand or whatever, it just doesn't bring you anywhere. So in Zen circles, the generalization of the teaching over however many cultures you want to go, from South America all the way over to deep China and India in between, it's essentially nothing. The secret is that there's no secret, that everybody is essentially arguing and having all of these philosophical realizations as part of a pious spiritual journey that serves as a greater lesson and a journey to learn that there is only nothing. And in doing so, you reach a state that is referred to as clarity. It's called Zen, right? It's a state that can't be defined or talked about. So the story goes that Jesus was born this way, but not just born this way. He was rock solid this way. He had a sort of rock solid attainment in his childhood of essentially perfect meditation, to the degree where he would pull in miracles and more or less be the conduit to them. And this is in the memory that I have access to, it is the mechanism by which he performs a lot of the miracles in the Gnostic tradition. And in the Gnostic tradition, they have much more meat detail about what he was really up to. That he was like a rat of a kid. And the memories that I have access to in the record, the natural genetic record, are essentially he sat around. People were quite offended by his energy and the way that he engaged socially, the people that he chose to talk to, and the things that he chose to get into. Essentially he caused moral quandary with the people that were around him as a child, with his behavior. And on top of this, when people came to either antagonize or question him or anything of the like, he would not only visibly curse them with his language, like his body language or his words. He would also physically curse them, as in like something bad would happen to this person, on top of which whatever it is they were antagonizing this person about, essentially he would prove them wrong instantaneously. And this would cause a continuous how you say, almost like a confusion. People are constantly trying to figure out what is this guy's deal really, like who is he really. There are a lot of people who I in the quote unquote in the memory that I have access to, they're saying, everybody has like assumptions about what kind of creature this is, and there had been stories that it would happen and so on. And the meat behind that is essentially that there was already a being who had come down. In the story, Jesus is supposed to be a man who becomes enlightened. And the record, what I saw, what I still see, what is still opening up to me even more, and there are multiple versions of it because the universe is repeating. He's a rebirth of the Luciferian side of essentially the creature that Gabriel is. That Gabriel is a member of a family that are energetic beings, and they operate as a unit, and their intelligence also operates as a unit, in the sense that they're like a hive mind that's also not a hive mind. You could compare it to a TAC team in the military. They have constant communication, and everything that they're doing, they have specific roles, and any goal they have, each one of them is going to fulfill a role to in more or less manifest the outcome of this goal. So they are the same kind of group of beings, and getting into what their duties are and what they're up to on a larger scale is another concern. But more or less, we find ourselves in this position because we are them. This is all all life forms are all the same group. There can be any possible emanation of anything, but in the terms of history, in the terms of what we're highlighting as already having happened and being at play now, essentially all of these religions are byproducts of real energies that break themselves apart, and as they come back together, there are many messages that more or less seem to be real in the chaos of all of that change, but they're ultimately not. Things like you become one with the Father. I do have the same, because a lot of people argue he wasn't about that. I have the same memory of him essentially arguing to people as he got older that he had a divine father, and that he remembered his divine father, and that he knew how to get back to it, and he would become one with it, and there was an implication and a promise and so on, like a promise about what it would mean and generally when it would happen and how it would occur. And it was a lot of it is a half-truth. It's only half of the story, which is why any lie works to any degree, is because it needs to use some degree of actual truth so that it sparks something within the general populace, and then the rest is really just washed out by the sheer hope and faith, sheer will of the mind. The reality is it's not one way or the other. It's not evil or good. That actually, what I remember is that Gabriel and Lucifer are essentially the same being, where Lucifer is a further continuation of what it was. And before, it never had a name. It didn't actually have a name. It has been switching between essentially being reborn and being continuous. So it can be continuous for any amount of time, and then it can go back to being reborn. It can also remember and know itself for any amount of time and then forget. And it does this essentially in the spirit of labor, only in the sense of labor of to achieve an outcome, and that outcome is in some sense, so it's always in the spirit of computation, to learn something and then put that data to use to execute some kind of function, and that function has some application in the larger system, changes something, increases efficiency somewhere, or even if it does decrease efficiency somewhere, that is to increase efficiency elsewhere. And again, this is where you go even deeper into the blur of, essentially good and evil does not exist there. These fields where you're going beyond birth and death, what you're looking at is, I mean, there's no term for describing it. You can only sort of reach deeper and deeper up, and deeper and deeper in or down, or however you want to look at it, and you can get more words and more definitions, but you can't actually make the statement of what's there and what how does it all connect, and what exactly who's who, and so on. These are statements that are just to be made, and they'll be made however they're made. They don't. It's Murphy's law. Everything is quite literally Murphy's law. You have a set of conditions here, and there's a more or less a directionality to the energies. Those energies are building something, and essentially this manifest means to build. So the populace and all of the individuals are manifesting their reality in the sense that they're deciding who they are, and then using the tools available. The tools available are just multiplying in their frequency, and sort of climbing out into the open, where they're all very accessible, and it was not like that. Um, but this is really the concept of averages, if you ask me. It just means that there's more going on. So no matter who you are, you find a higher frequency of what it is that you're associated with. You can be as rare as you want, but you'll still find others like you somewhere, and even if it's just in the greater universe somehow. Essentially, we're all liars. There's no truth. There's no ultimate truth at all. There are facts. Facts are measurements. Measurements are verifiable only until to the point where they no longer hold. The measurements are made again, and the results are different. This is just how it goes, because you don't actually know it's not just that you don't know what the pivot point of reality is. Like, where does the change come from? Does it come from the macro or the micro or the quantum? If something swept through and changed, like turned up the universe, like there was a knob for it, and suddenly everything was glowing or something, what would cause that? Where would it come from? And it comes from essentially anywhere that it does. It essentially, you do whatever you have to do. These adages don't exist for nothing. I mean, they do, but they don't. So they, every joke has a bit of truth, and so on. Um, there is a reason for everything, and it doesn't mean anything. You can get really caught up in this whole business of like isms, narcissism, and nihilism, and so on, and the arguments that people will get into with how you're supposed to be, and it's absolute nonsense. It's just another clinging mechanism, and everybody's got something they're clinging onto, and they swear to God that it is the thing, and that nobody better get too far away from where they're at, or they're gonna get concerned. The reality is, you have to go to work creating whatever you're creating, however you have to do it, however you can do it. And it's going to be up to you to, one, be willing to pay the price, and two, live with paying the price, because you don't go to work paying the price. You pay the price in the act of manifesting whatever it is that you are asking for. If you do build a house with your hands, you put in the work and you pay for the wood and so on, or you have to convince somebody. And the same mechanism goes to everything else, regardless of how people personally feeling their sensibilities of what counts as work done by you or somebody else. Everything is one, so who cares?